conscious families.
Really?
And it's really.
Starting on the right. All right, are we good? Okay, welcome to the Infrastructure Task Force Advisory Committee, Monday, March 4th. Please call the roll.
Mr. Angeli,
Here.
Mr. Boratsky, Mr. Labrie,
Here.
Mr. Lamberts,
Here.
Mr. Partington,
Yeah.
Ms. Retzko,
Here.
Mr. Walters,
Here.
Mr. Zellman,
Here.
and Chairman Mono.
Here,
You have a call.
thank you. Approval of the agenda. Do I hear an approval of the agenda?
So move, Madam Chair. Second.
And seconded? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, no opposed, any action? Approval of the previous minutes. Does everybody have an opportunity to look at the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, second, any comments? Oh, bless the Lord. Motion to approve the minutes, all say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Quick meeting.
thank you.
That was not the adjourn.
Okay, all right, old business, let's start. Cheryl, Laura, let's go.
Good afternoon, Laura Reese, Director of Office of Management and Budget. We're here with you again after the third workshop. I thought what we would do, if you're okay with it, Chair, is introduce Ashley Dessard, who is our Strategic Communications Manager. You all had a lot of questions last time about how we're promoting the Reimagined City Hall. So I asked her to come and talk to us a little bit about what's been done to promote the survey to promote the meetings. After Ashley's done having, a little overview with you all, Erin Kendrick, who's the Deputy Director of Finance is here. So Marilyn's gonna go over kind of some results from the last meeting. And then Erin Kendrick, the Deputy Director of Finance, along with Glenn Marcos, who's our Chief Procurement Officer. They're here to walk through, the preparation and presentation for next week's, meeting. Does that sound okay?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so I'll turn it over to Ashley and then we'll have Dickies Consulting provide their piece, followed by our finance folks. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
So I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I know that there had been some concern about attendance at the meetings. And I wanted to give you just a brief overview of what we have done so far. And I generated a report for social media just so that I could see how our campaign there was doing. So if you'll remember when we initially started doing the outreach for this, we had an 11-point plan, right? We set up a dedicated web page that had all the information for all of the workshops. And anyone who was not able to attend in person was able to participate in the surveys online. We shared all of that information on our website, on all of the posters that we put around town, the flyers, all that kind of stuff. We sent direct mail postcards to every address in the city with the dates for all of the workshops and with a QR code. If you're not able to participate in person, you can do it on that engaged page. We put flyers up at City Hall building, high traffic areas, city website. We launched a social media campaign, and I'll come back to that in just a minute. Issued press releases to local newspaper, TV, radio stations. We asked our community stakeholders to assist us. We send it out to all the civic associations every time. We have gotten our partners like Riverwalk. We have an ad in the Riverwalk magazine, the monthly magazine, telling people about the workshops and how they can participate. The chamber has also helped us. DDA has also helped us. We send it out via our email distribution list. It's included in some of the commission's newsletters that they send out, and we also have it on the back of the water bill. So we have done exponentially more outreach on this particular I guess series of workshops than we've done on a lot of other things. Going back to social media. So these are just the organic posts that we've pushed out. We've done 22 posts across all of our platforms since the series started, and we do reminders. So those posts have been seen 16,800 times.
Wow.
Engagements on those 22 posts 422 times. That's how many times someone has either clicked a like or a love or a laughing face or whatever it is that they do. And then people have commented on it 16 times. So not a ton of engagement for those 16,800 people who have seen them on social media. And I know that we have to get a few dozen responses on the engaged survey. We probably have more details on those numbers.
Yeah, we can provide that, yeah.
But I just wanted to give you guys just that a few numbers and remind you of all of the outreach avenues that we have used and get your feedback to see if there's anything else you feel like we should be doing. Tell me what you would like to see.
Can I ask a question? As not being a social media person, when you say you've done 22 posts on platforms,
Yes.
social media, what does that mean?
So the city uses the different platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, which is now X. We still call it Twitter. We use Nextdoor. We also use YouTube. So those are the main platforms that we're sharing out this information. So that just means the 22 posts that went out went the same post for telling people it's coming up this weekend, join us if you can on the different platforms that we use.
Okay, that's what I need to know. James,
You said 16,000 views on your social media
16,800 impressions, which is just how many times it shows up in someone's feed. Yeah.
Okay, and how many comments?
16,
16. 16.
correct.
And were those like laughing or critical or?
I can do, I haven't
or
done,
fancy? What were the comments?
we, not as much as you would think. I can, pull up, if you give me just a couple of minutes while you're asking other questions, I can pull up some examples of the comments. It hasn't generated as much conversation as some of our other posts have. I think the interest in this particular topic just isn't, it hasn't generated a lot of response.
But
Are these organic impressions or are we sponsoring and putting ad dollars for these?
I've done both.
Okay. What, do you know from a budget standpoint, how much in ad dollars you spent?
Social media ad dollars don't really go that far. So I think I've spent $200 to $400 on it, but that's pretty average for what we do when we boost posts like that.
and Roosevelt?
When we began this, most marketing people set goals on the number of responses that they would like to see. The average is about 10%. And this is far less than that. And you've asked a question, let me ask it back to you. What are we going to do to enhance the number of people that care but not participating? I've been at all the workshops, and after everybody was identified by staff or committee or whatever, at the last workshop, when nobody left.
It's pretty good workshop.
And it was a good workshop, but you were talking to the church, you know, you were preaching to the choir. I didn't see that many community people there for the sake of learning what was going on. How are we going to reach these people?
So I can tell you that I think we are reaching these people. I don't know that they are as inclined to participate.
I asked the wrong question.
I think, yeah, I mean, going back to your comment about the numbers, so when I started with the city, our email distribution list, we had thousands of subscribers, and our open rate, and that's a marketing a way to see success. Our open rate was about 18 to 20%. That's about standard for email distribution. Right now, ours is sitting at 50%. So 50% of the people that we send emails to are opening and reading those emails. And that's pretty big.
Huge.
Yeah, so
Yes, you.
I think, you know, my goal, and obviously our office operates differently than a regular business would. We're not trying to sell you something, we're just trying to get you the information. So I think reaching the highest number of people has always, with the information that they need, has always been my goal. I don't know that I can make them care, you know, to necessarily participate on a Saturday morning and give up their time for this.
But how we as a committee and you as a marketing person is going to be able to gauge the effectiveness of your communication effort?
Well, I think the effectiveness I'm seeing is that people are seeing it. We've done pretty much everything I know how to do to reach out to people, to get them to at least know that this is happening. You know, getting them more engaged. I don't know if there's some kind of, you know, an incentive for people to participate. I think, you know, the people that are showing up are like you, they're very civic minded, they're very involved. I think there's, you know, there's also probably a disconnect for you all probably go to City Hall a lot more often than the average, you know, person who lives in Fort Lauderdale. I don't know that I've ever been to a City Hall in any city that I've lived in other than Fort Lauderdale. So,
Yeah, so I have some observations on it.
sure.
you mentioned that your job is to just provide people with information. And you do. Now you send out the poster and it's got all the information. When I get that poster, I scream. And I say, so what? I mean, you're just giving them information. We're not extorting them to come. And we're also not, and this is not our fault. We have nothing to excite them about other than we're doing this. And I always find that people will react when you goose them a little bit, you know, like a teaser line or something like that, you know. Your community is gonna be overwhelmed with development, they show up. Or you know, fire on fire and they show up. But if you just give them information like a flyer, I looked at the flyer and I put the flyer down. It doesn't stir me to do anything. So that's a problem with our process here. Our process is just to give people information. Well, 16,800 people saw the information, but they didn't connect to it. It didn't seem to be important to them or something that they, you know, needed to focus on. Like when I do it with my civic association, I usually hit on, we're spending your money, you know, we're ruining your quality of life. This is important to you because, you know, this, that, and the other. So we tell them in our communications why this information is important and why they should be coming to the meeting. I think we're a little past it now.
Yes.
So that may just be an observation at this point. And I think, you know, we've done as much as we can from the perspective, okay, here's the information. But if there's no action connected to the information, people are not going to get excited. As soon as we start talking about a site, or as soon as we start talking about it's going to cost you $125 million more and it's going to go on your taxes and you're going to pay more taxes, then everybody's going to show up. There's no doubt about it. But I think, you know, you've done an admirable job trying to get the information out. And I think we just got to keep on rocking and rolling here. Any other comments, guys? Ladies? Yes, Peter, and then it's Ralph.
This was something I brought up last time. I don't know when the old city hall is about to be demolished, but I wonder if, you know, just prior to that happening, you give a special effort to reach out to the, particularly somebody like the Sun Sentinel, say, you know, I'd venture to suggest that 75% of our residents don't realize that City Hall downtown is closed at this point.
Right.
So, you know, the media loves anything with pictures and video. So pulling down that building would be something they'd be interested in. Maybe you can grab that as an opportunity to say, you can comment on what will replace it and here's the link.
Yes,
Something like
yes,
that.
absolutely. We do intend to do that. I don't think that the building is actually gonna be coming down until late summer,
Yeah, which is unfortunate.
which will be after the series is concluded, but yeah, we will be doing that.
Would have been nice to have a Jig Jet cartoon of the building being demolished and send that out along with this and get people's attention. Yes, I'm sorry, Ralph, and then James?
Let me reiterate, I think you all have done a fabulous job effort-wise in trying to reach out to the public and make them aware of the new city hall and a lot of information. On this third session, I asked my other directors at the Imperial Point Civic Association meeting. And I was only able to get one person out of there. Oh, that was Betty. But there has to be something that we can, and I've spoken to a lot of the residents about the new city hall and trying to get their input to, you know, help the city put that information in to come up with a final blueprint, if you will. But they don't seem to have any feeling like, well, what do I care? And that's the unfortunate part of it. How do you excite somebody unless you put in there, well, the 16,000 person that asked the right question will win a free trip to Hallandale.
You tell me what you need.
But, but I think it's important that, you know, there's been a lot of effort, sorry about that. But there's been a lot of effort. I don't know what the ingredient necessary is that will excite the person to.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, the rule is when you're putting a message out, the what's in it for me is the main question to ask. And, I mean, we're spending your money, that's number one, we're spending your money, this building belongs to you, what do you wanna see in it? And I think we've tried to communicate that out throughout the. Different avenues.
Yes, James and then Mike.
So, I think the efforts have been great.
Yeah.
And it's disheartening that there's been a lack of interest, which is unfortunate. Saturday mornings, who wants to give up their Saturday? Can't do it during the work week because we work, do it at night, no, I'm too tired, I gotta cook dinner, I gotta do this. There's no good time for it. So it has to be. I mean, people have to really, really, really want to donate their time to this, and I just don't know. You know, we've had people look at the websites or other social media. There's been some responses. We've had people come to the meetings. We've gathered the information. Our goal is to put together recommendations.
Hey,
And we have to do that. And our approach was, let's reach out to the community and see what the community has to say. Well, if the community doesn't have anything to say, then we say what the guidelines need to be for this new city hall. And, you know, that's the way it goes. That's where it is. So 3 years from now, when somebody's complaining because they didn't have daycare in the city hall, it's like, too bad. You had your choice. You had your time. That's just the way it has to be.
I think in the report, it's, if I may, Mike, and then we'll come back to you. In the report, we have to acknowledge, we have to give a summary of all the outreach we did and what we
Yes.
got, and we have to acknowledge that, you know, this was less than we had hoped for, but they were enthusiastic. Whoever showed up was very enthusiastic and involved, but this was less than we had hoped for. And so this will, you know, we will have to take that into account and do just some words to the effect of, you know, it is what it is, and we're grateful that whoever came and was involved, but now we have to, just as James said, we have an obligation to take as much as we can from what we got and do our work. Yeah, Mike.
James, you hit the nail on the head. That's more or less what I was gonna say. I mean, I run a substantial nonprofit for the state of Florida and for the county here, and I'd say for years and years and years, I beat my head against the wall trying to get people to figure out how to get people to show up to what we do. So this challenge is not unique to what we're doing. It's just, unfortunately, it's just, I think, a product of our environment. And I credit the work that's been done here because it's a big undertaking. And I'm curious if the city has ever made this type of an effort or an outreach on something like this in the past, because I feel like this is significant, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this level of the direct mail, we don't budget for direct mail for anything really. I mean, so this particular effort was unique in that way. We do the magazines, which should be hitting your mailboxes this week. But other than the water treatment plant, we did a town hall meeting where we did a call out to the entire city. That's the only thing I can equate this level of effort to.
Yeah, and just a quick follow on to that, if I may. I again, what James said, I don't think that at the end of the day, when we finish this series, I think we can all feel comfortable that, like, you know, somebody comes and says, oh, well, I never heard anything about this. Hold on, you know what I mean? That's, you know, so that's one thing. That my fellow question is, Neighbor Support Night was February 15th.
Mhm.
How was that? Does anybody know? I don't know how was that
Very well
received, you know?
Very
Well attended, well received, as far as I know, we did something specific for right? For,
Maryland's
for the-
staff, she could tell you more.
That was great.
And
Good
that was the-
chocolate too. How many
Exactly.
surveys did we get? How many? We must have gotten a lot of surveys.
So 73 for this.
73, just that 1 or 2 hours.
Well, no, not from, that's from that plus everything.
Oh,
So
that's
73
good.
total.
That wasn't so good. I mean, there's a lot of people standing around. They finished the surveys, yes. Roosevelt and then Martha.
If you can go back when we first started talking about this, I told you it was gonna be difficult.
Mm.
I said that we're gonna hear the most when they start to build the building. Then everybody gonna say, but you didn't ask me. We didn't ask you because we couldn't find it. You know, you had it, but I've done everything that I know to do. I even had Shirley come out and do presentations in the neighborhood. I don't know what else to do, but just, I think we can be pretty much left with a good feeling that the fact that people wasn't there wasn't due to the lack of us, including staff and committees not trying. And I feel good about it. I don't like it, but I feel good about it.
You had your hand up?
Thank you. Well, I think the public is telling us, they actually, just the lack of response, it is a response, they're not interested. We may don't like that answer, but we have to take this as an answer. I think absolutely Madam Indigo said, there is no price tag on this yet. The two reasons, maybe they trust that the city is well governed, and we're gonna make these decisions responsibly, and we're not gonna build out what we cannot afford. But I can tell you, if we go that direction, there's gonna be a lot of negative feedback if we overprice the project or we put at daycares and, you know, yoga. They probably have a place to do yoga already, and they have a probably place to put the daycare and the kids. So they do not care to build another daycare or another yoga studio in our city hall. So I think this is the answer. I think the fact that they see it, they're not engaged, they probably trust that we're gonna be very responsible with that decision. We just need to listen to that answer and take it as an answer.
A no answer is an answer.
Correct.
Did you have?
I want to add to what you said, like you brought up. That is the answer. Tell them, give them a range of how much it's gonna cost.
Yeah.
Because if that doesn't get them out, then we're then we got another problem. Because we all read the survey results, we all saw the results at 3 times. The spread of what is wanted is too great to choose. It goes from none to everything. So who's gonna pick? Like you pick.
Peter?
So this is a little tongue in cheek, but one thing I've clearly got already is that people want a cafeteria or food places in City Hall, and that's almost getting that as a top priority. I almost wonder whether people have views about, you know, the food they like and don't like. I almost wonder if we should bring forward artificially a discussion on what we envision the way of food provision in a new city hall, just in order to engender some discussion, because people like talking about that stuff because they can relate to it. Just a thought.
Okay. All right, so are you all where we are? We're gonna keep doing what we're doing. The only other thing I would say is that that town hall or that telephone town hall on the water treatment plant was very, very effective.
Yes.
And we, at the beginning of this, talked about a potential telephone town hall at the end of this. If I recall.
Yeah, so, and Laura Reese. So the discussion around the telephone town hall is that's a way to share out information if there's a lot to share. But we're trying to bring in information, which that wasn't the best approach to collect information. So if at some point we're then ready to talk about what's happening or what we're planning to do, I think that's when it would be a better opportunity to do the telephone town hall.
Yes, so there is an opportunity for people to ask questions via the telephone town hall, but it's mostly a way for the city to hold a virtual town hall where people can listen to a presentation, they can see it on a Zoom screen, and then they can submit some questions, and there is a little Q&A on the back end of that presentation.
So maybe at the point where we've actually done our draft recommendations, let's look at it as draft. And we have, A, B, C, D, these are our recommendations for the guidelines. And we put it out, maybe at that point, we could talk about a town hall meeting and say, okay, we heard from everybody, here's what we're thinking about. And then take some questions. The first question is gonna be, how much is this gonna cost? Are you out of your minds? But at least we get that back. Something to think about when we get to that point.
Absolutely, those are easy to pull together, you can absolutely do that, right?
Okay, thank you so much. Angela.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you.
All right, yes,
Open up, it's gonna be on Thursday. So,
yeah,
if that crowd that you're talking, asking these questions, what do you know about the town hall?
very
If that
nice.
crowd doesn't know.
We're in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta send Rich.
Okay, very good. All right. Sure.
Excellent discussion. So, we're back where we were, we're doing the same kind of cover sheet where we're actually presenting the workshop in the same manner that it was presented before. With, of course, the city doing the introductions and then you all as the infrastructure task force with Maryland covering issues. And then we're just gonna go over the recap, talk about the day's purpose. And then the data information is going to be presented by these two gentlemen. They're going to come up and present in a few minutes here. And then we'll just cover some past information that we got from other city halls that you are aware of here in Broward County and how they finance and procure. And then we'll go into the breakout session so that actually we'll do the survey. But the surveys, when I click through, is actually the last few pages, but we'll do the survey like we did before the breakout sessions to give them some food for thought, because the questions address some of the things.
Okay,
And then we'll do the breakout sections and then we will wrap up.
all right.
And so I'm just gonna click through them. You've seen this before, the actual timeframe in the next workshop being March 23rd at the community center. So as we said before in the last three, the recaps have been about open space, park space. People have talked about winning government services. And they've also included transportation, education, and looking at it as a collaborative hub. And you've heard them talking about the lease space, et cetera. So those are some of the conversations that, and as you had just discussed, the food services and affordable housing. So those have been top. At the last meeting, of course, 28 people were there, and as you can see, District 2 had the most, followed by 3, and then 4, and 1. So the recap of the summary of the feedback, we categorized these as we did before, where people were envisioning a canvas, and so the categories there were wanting it to be inviting, looking at some outdoor facilities, and also making sure, as we've been saying throughout, provide the staff what they need. And then in terms of community resources, we've talked about this before, making sure the history is there, local exhibit space for artists, looking at collaborations and looking at business organizations also being available in those spaces. And then, of course, looking at it being a welcoming facility. And then in terms of interactive with the public, technology, of course, comes up where the public can use that as well as being a welcoming space and also wanting to serve the youth. That kept coming up as well. The next, of course, was easily accessible. So, of course, wanting to make the location accessible wherever it's chosen to be. And again, that free parking and secure space, also wanting comfortable experience, meaning welcoming when people come in. They also want it to be, to respect the environment and, also look at the variety of amenities which are on the next few slides.
Cheryl, can you take a question in the middle?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Let's
yes.
ask a question.
Yes.
And I apologize, I didn't make it to the last workshop. What is it meant by attract and serve you?
Excuse me,
I don't know what that means.
what was the word?
Which one were you referring to?
It's an interface with public.
Uh-huh.
I think it's the next back. on the-
Yeah.
Yeah, they're at the bottom.
Interface with the public?
So the attractions are viewed, that's on the very bottom of the
And
page.
Says, use people to welcome the public, and then the last bullet point is attract and serve you.
I know we were categorizing, so what was said at a couple of tables were actually having somebody as, the entrance way to, in fact, greet people.
An ambassador, so to speak.
That's what that was. That's that discussion. Attract and serve youth. This is where people were saying at a couple of tables that we need to be engaging youth, having actual functions such as perhaps getting with the school system and having some sort of a mentor program where we're actually teaching youth civic, what it's like to be civic minded and get them engaged in understanding their government and so on.
Thank you.
And as we moved on, I skipped 2 things. So the color coding is really by district, but we wanted to show you, of course, in the survey, the responses to the first question was, what amenities would you desire and utilize in the city hall? And as you can see, that cafe keeps coming up. Food. And then the other thing that keeps coming up, of course, is the historical museum and making sure people understand about the city of Fort Lauderdale, how it was formed, what its history is, and as you can see, followed by the cultural as well as education center. Again, that's where that comes up, where they're wanting to educate the public, wanting new people who are coming into the neighborhood to know about the neighborhood, what services the city provides. That's what was being said at the tables. And of course, lease space, that's again where people are looking at the early days of City Hall, and in fact, you know, the Red Crosses and the chamber and other people were also a part of the space. Transportation does, the folks who are looking at transportation and understanding how that's coming along as well, wanting it to be connected back to City Hall and making sure that that space is available. And then, of course, the other things that have always been on the list continues to be that affordable housing, art gallery, et cetera. You all have seen this before, meeting space for the HOAs. And so, excuse me, I heard people talking about the yoga and outdoor space. That was, of course, stated as well, because when we started talking about outdoor space, people were thinking about things you do or how that space could be used because they've seen other people do that as well.
Roosevelt, question?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
I just want to just spend a minute on the affordable housing questions or comments.
Mhm.
How are they connecting affordable housing with City Hall?
Actually.
And I know what the county said.
Yes,
And I
yes.
know that the city doesn't back them. And so when we get to the point of development or redevelopment in the downtown area or wherever the new City Hall is going to be, how are you going to ensure affordable housing?
What the tables are saying is housing needs to be included in around, because that's what they were talking about, the whole downtown campus.
I understand, but that's not it.
That's aspirational. I mean,
It is
it's aspirational.
It is.
And I think you also have to be there, and the students were pushing.
Yes.
The architectural students were pushing, because it's part of their project. I think we should just, let's move on.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Because,
Some things come up at these meetings that, have really nothing to do with the meetings and.
Okay, all right.
moving along.
And affordable housing thing discussed. So
Everybody loves affordable.
everywhere. So, in the next question, other than for city business and services, how would you like to see space in City Hall used? And once again, looking at how high the nonprofit and educational category came back, because again, they're focusing in on educating people about city government and what they in fact offer residents.
Yeah.
That's most of what was being said,
Okay.
not education in terms of the anything other than the mentorship programs for youth and college students as well, since we do have the campuses downtown. Again, nonprofit meeting space and HOA meeting space came up again as being needed. And then again, the small business and incubator space. And then followed by other governments. People are aware, and you'll see on the fact sheet and a couple of the other statements. People are remembering when, of course, Broward County and the city of Fort Lauderdale were looking at doing a government center together. So some of that is coming out. So having space for other types of governments to also be in that space, so you could, citizens could have access to whether the federal or state. Question about that?
Nope.
This is the kind of how, are there any non-essential services that should be included in the new city hall that would be positively beneficial for the city of Fort Lauderdale neighbors, businesses and visitors? Kind of the hodgepodge and
So what is it,
Everything that
a
was
word
being said.
cloud of all the words that were spoken?
yes, that's exactly, you remember all of the amenities that were being discussed by the 6 tables. Serving kids, civic space, green space, auditorium, so we just kind of made it more.
Is it-
But it's in your fact sheet.
I appreciate that, but is this like the typical word cloud that indicates how many times that word was mentioned, or is this your interpretation?
Well, it's kind of a combination of both. What did you say?
Yeah.
A combination of both. How often the words were said, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, that's the typical word cloud. Okay, so people mentioned green more than they mentioned daycare.
Correct.
Okay, well, that's very helpful.
They
I like
mentioned
that.
coffee and.
Okay, well, that's very interesting.
Okay, but then you will see what you just mentioned on this one, where do you have any additional input that you would like to share regarding the new city hall? So you will see what you just talked about. Daycare, what I talked about, which was the joint center, parking spaces, I won't read every single one of these, but a transit hub,
We put in the.
dedicated senior center, so just, a lot of things, just like you said, everything.
Everything, okay.
I know that.
Benefits. That's cool.
So the other thing, the next question was, where would you like the new city hall to be located? And as you can see, they were talking about, they want to see it remain downtown. Important to keep government where the campus is. You can see where some people said, put it where the federal courthouse building is.
Yes.
Others said central downtown. Others said near, a library, access to water, close to I-95, so that would be a little further up. Tear down the building and replace it, in the city limits, it was fun. And then the last one was away from the busy downtown. So again, people are kind of all over the place.
Yes, Ruth.
On that,
Yes.
on that issue with the federal building, it wasn't so much, it wasn't a replacement, it was to revamp and modernize the building that's there and make that,
Mhm,
city hall,
mhm.
within it, the bounds in which they have.
Yeah, I think that could be more descriptive rather than just say federal court building.
Go ahead and say we have.
Adaptively
Yeah.
reuse the federal
Okay,
court.
okay, we'll make a note of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And again, we'll be talking about today's purpose, which in this case, it'll be the type of procurement and the type of financing. And I'm gonna let the gentleman go over the extensive slides that they have, that we put in here that they're going to deal with, that deal with the type of procurement and the type of finance.
You tell them to bring a budget.
I'm gonna let you answer that.
But it's 5 million. See what you can do.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about procurement. The exciting stuff, right? I'm Glenn Markles, I'm the Chief Procurement Officer for the City of Fort Lauderdale. I'm gonna present to you pretty much an overview with key highlights on the various construction project delivery methods. You basically have 4 major types. So you have the design bid build, which is the traditional approach. You have the design build, you have the construction management at risk, and then you have the private-public partnership, your P3. Project delivery is pretty much a comprehensive process. It includes your planning phase, your design and construction phase, and pretty much you take on these phases to execute and complete a building facility or other types of projects. As you can see within this slide, you have your delivery systems, and then that delivery system results on your procurement methods, followed by the type of contract and contract pricing that these delivery systems will yield. Your design bid build, you typically have your ITB, your award is to the lowest responsive or responsible bidder. Your contract type would be a fixed price or lump sum, and your design build typically have a qualification-based system or best value. Your type of contract results in a fixed price lump sum or negotiated price type of contract. Your CM at risk, again, is your RQ. You first select your construction manager, followed by an ITB. That ITB goes to your subcontractor. That CM manages the project overall. Within that process, you try to get a guaranteed maximum price. And then with your P3, you have a qualification-based system. Obviously, you have your innovation, where you have your project delivery, typically a design build, with a finance, operation, and maintenance component. You try to get to a targeted price. In your design bid build, you have 3 sequential project phases. You have your design phase. That is, you're trying to get the designer record, followed by a bid phase, when a contractor is selected, and then you have the contractor start constructing City Hall. The method of award here again is to your lowest responsive and responsible bidder. You have 3 primary players here. You have the owner being the city, the designer and contractor. You have 2 separate contracts, one with the designer and the other one with the contractor. With the design bid build, you have the liability pretty much on design, that being the city, the owner. You can see that there's pros and cons to a design bid build. I'm not going to get into each and every detail here, but I did outline your pros and cons with key considerations as to this type of delivery method. As far as the design build, this design build delivery method encompasses pretty much a single contract with a designer and builder. Pretty much you have a integrated design build firm, you have a contractor-led, designer-led, joint venture, or developer-led. In this type of delivery method, you have the liability on the design itself, meaning the design builder takes on the liability. Again, I list here your pros and cons with key considerations. I'm going to let you guys read over that. There is advantages with a design build. Obviously, it leads to a faster project. However, you do have some liabilities, and that liability, it's not on the city, it's pretty much on the design build team. When it comes to a design build delivery method, one issue that's a major con here is that typically you have fewer competition amongst the firms. Typically, it does involve joint ventures getting together and submitting a response to the design build. The next delivery method is your construction manager at risk. Pretty much you have a construction manager being selected on a pretty much RFP, RFQ process. Not involving pricing when you're trying to hire the construction manager at risk. That construction manager at risk gets involved with the within the design phase, and then starts putting out bids to subcontractors, trying to build up the construction of City Hall, which then leads to either a fixed lump sum or guaranteed maximum price type of contracts. Again, you have pros and cons to this. I'm gonna allow you to end up reading that yourself. And moving along to your public-private or private-public partnerships, your P3s. Pretty much this is one of the more innovative type of approaches out there. Depending who you talk to, you have folks who are in favor of it, and you have others that are pretty much naysayers of this process. It involves an agreement between a public agency and a private sector partner for the design, construction, financing, and often long-term operations and maintenance of one or more infrastructure assets by the private sector partner or a specified term. There's always a financing or finance component when it comes to your P3 projects. There must be a financing component. In this type of project, there has to be not only financing, but equity involved when this procurement takes place. Again, you have your pros and cons when it comes to this approach. I think the overall takeaway from this slide is that pretty much every type of liability that can exist is transferred onto the P3. So whether it's a design risk, whether it's a construction risk, any type of availability risk, market risk, the demand, operational and maintenance up to the life cycle of the project, which is usually around 20 years. Once the private sector or private driven firm operates and maintains the facility for 20 years, then that ownership transfers over to the city, including the risk. And as far as any financing and residual risk, that's all taken upon that P3 firm. Pretty much that's my presentation. Any questions?
Glenn, did you hear about the progressive design delivery method?
Yes, it's it's funny because depending on the agencies, I know that the city of Tampa, they've done progressive design. Honestly, I don't know how they've done it. I know here at the city, we have talked about it. There's questions whether it's allowable or not. It's not recognized by state law. So right now, we would have to work with the city attorney's office to see if we ever do get comfortable with progressive design.
So that would require change in the ordinance. Because I feel the change in the ordinance,
State law.
well, you just said Tampa down.
It's state law. It's the state law so we can only do what's permissible by state law. So the city attorney office has to feel comfortable that we can do progressive design.
And what is progressive
So
design?
progressive design is as the project is getting constructed and built, you kind of control the cost. So you may have a design up front that you want 17 bathrooms, and then you finding this out that, it's gonna cost you such a big money, and you may wanna do only 15 bathroom, kind of scale down or build up, right? Like you don't know, actual as you building, you kind of progressing with the design. So you have some upfront, the design, and you have the criteria what you want and how many stores and how many units. But the progressive design came to Florida because the supply chain issue. So before COVID, we all were expediting construction, and a lot of public procurement looked into the progressive design because there was supply chain issue. We can ask, do we want to build this, but then we don't have equipment, we don't have machines, and then you kind of have to scratch whatever you design because they can't find those products, and your money goes, you have to redesign, right? So that gives you, it's a 24/7, you're working with the engineers and construction team. It's kind of similar what the design build is.
It is,
Not the design build, but the second one, which is very popular in a public procurement, the design build itself.
Yeah.
But progressive design, it gives you more control, kind of full stop when you don't realize like, okay, that's gonna be very complicated to find alternative. Because the moment when you finish your design, you kind of done deal, like you gotta, no matter what, you gotta deliver the project, right? And then you have a delay. But the progressive design gives you that opportunity to re-enter the contracts and re-enter the procurement.
in a
Sounds
nutshell,
like change orders to me.
well, in a nutshell, what happens is that the design build team continues to progress throughout the project, and they're able to reassess and reevaluate the project and make changes as you move forward.
Really,
Go ahead.
this is, you're getting them on board earlier and they're developing with the city or other customers, the design criteria package. Normally, we do that in-house. We put a design criteria package out and then go into the design build. In this case, you're getting a company on board before you even figure out exactly what you want.
Yeah,
And then there's different phases where you would be able to offload the designer or the constructor based on if you want to moving forward or not moving forward with them.
Yeah, all right, Gerald,
What's the police station?
the police station straight up design, what the.
It's design
the police
build.
design build.
It's, it wasn't, no, it's the design build. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was design
No,
build.
it was construction management at risk.
TM at risk.
Design build, right?
No,
No,
CM
no.
at risk.
So you
At
have,
risk.
you have, ACOM, who was the designer,
Mhm.
and then you have Moss and Associates as your contract.
And we were the client,
I'm sorry?
and the city was the client.
Yes.
So it wasn't, so what, of the four,
Construction management and risk.
thank you, construction management, that's the answer to the question. Yes, Peter.
So I just need to understand on the progressive, all this progressiveness is done prior to construction. Otherwise, I could envision you doing the foundation and then deciding you can't afford the building as big as the foundation. But that's not how it works.
that's
does
correct.
work like
You
that.
kind of have like 80% design before you start the construction. But like Alan just said, you sit with the team. So that's really, imagine the time right now that you spend on the designing the project, like Liz mentioned, ACOM design the police station. But then you hire another team, which is the construction team, and they probably know more than engineers, with all the respects to engineer. They're gonna say, hey, that's not gonna work, you're gonna have to re-enter that with, so you're wasting that time when you upfront sit with the
It
team.
kind of sounds like means and methods, where your designer has designed something, envisioning it to be built one way, then it's whatever, it's priced, and then somebody comes on board and said, there's a cheaper way to do it.
That sounds like value engineering.
Yes,
to me.
because you have your pricing also as you're designing, so you kind of control not only the project, but you control the price. And I can tell you, it's very popular in such a complex projects. Like when you water plant, wastewater plant, because so many different components that you may spend years and you may overlook. When you actually start doing the project, you're seeing, okay, well, what's working or not, or maybe something different on the market. So it is.
But what's the incentive?
Let me add something, because Marta said something at the beginning. The driver for the current batch of progressive with the supply chain problem. So let's say this was a classic example. It's gonna have a glass facade. Can't get glass. Lead time to glass is 6 months. Gonna wait. Or you're gonna change the facade to something else. That's where the
Correct.
progressive design came from. Can't get bathtubs. Okay, quick shower.
Put shower. Guys, I think we're getting into the weeds.
Yes, and I don't wanna throw another like procurement method, but I just wanna bring this to attention. that
Good, it's good to
Another
know.
option.
Where does the owner's rep come in this whole thing? Is that an option in with the recipe three? I mean, that's something I've heard before, but I don't know the details of how an owner's rep would work in an arrangement like this.
So I think regardless of the construction method you're using, depending on if you have in-house capacity or not to manage the project, you can hire an owner's rep. So we have an owner's rep who is doing the station, what's his name? The police station, David, well,
Laverne.
David Laverne, we brought on to be the owner's rep. For the stormwater project, we had, or the water treatment plant, we have Hazen and Sawyer, who we hired, because we don't have that in-house.
So that would be something that would likely happen on
On either one.
on this
Yeah.
project.
Yeah, would be that, or we would just directly hire somebody to be our project manager,
Yeah.
Got it.
depending on the complexity of it.
And they help determine these procurement processes? Are they part of that process or no?
We determine where we want, what we want to do, and then we hire somebody to do it for us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got it.
That is
okay.
an internal
Can we
discussion.
just two more questions on this, and because we gotta move, yeah.
Okay,
Peter.
my question, and maybe this is a question for Laura, is are any of these methods that we're going to throw out there and I'll give it to consider constrained by the way that the new city hall will be funded? You know,
That's this slide.
well,
So I
is
would
it,
say that E3 is the only one that might have some differences. If the proposer comes with their own financing or something, that's the only one that would be that could change how you procure it, is if they come with a P3, then that changes how you
And I'm gonna
finance
probably
it,
answer that
right?
question a different way.
Right.
If you look at the methods that we just went over, truly, the argument will be made that your design, you're actually, your build is your preferred method that will result in your most cost-effective, building of public city hall.
but my question was
If you're
getting,
talking about your design, build is your most cost-effective.
yes, I'm not really talking about cost effectiveness. I'm saying we know that the city is reaching its limits currently, at least as I understand it, its bonding capability. So if we're not able to say bond for City Hall, then it might rule out the design to be built, because that might be the only way we can come up with money. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm gonna step back and answering that question, because that's not for me to answer. I'm gonna probably refer to our finance director to answer that question. Linda?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Linda Short. I'm the Director of Finance. We're gonna be doing the bonding presentation coming up next. I'm not quite sure where we get the idea that we're hitting our bonding capacity. I had presented information to the commission on January 9th. And it just depends on what method we're gonna use to finance the information. If we're doing GOs, that requires a referendum and the taxpayers would vote on it. But when it comes to the non-ad valorem, which is what some of the other bonds are based off of, and probably what this would be based off of, if we decide not to go for a referendum, there's still sufficient capacity to issue $200 million. That's what our number is for this debt, if it comes to that.
In general obligation bonds?
Not in general obligation. General obligation requires a referendum and a
Okay,
vote.
I know
And
that.
so I'm looking at probably using non-ad valorem
Okay.
revenue, which is everything other than taxes.
And where does that go on that chart?
It goes right here on the special obligation.
Right there.
More special obligations.
Yeah.
So on top of the $136 million already outstanding,
Mhm.
let's say for the sake of the argument, we're gonna be looking at another 200 million
Yeah, the numbers support that. we
in that
support it.
place.
Mhm.
Yo, okay, well, slow down. Peter?
Do you guys want to do
So-
the bonding presentation next? Go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So as finance director,
Uh-huh.
you're kind of neutral. You don't see it necessarily a need to get a P3, because that would obviate initially the need for the city to finance this.
Well, with this, for instance, let's look at the last P3 we just did,
Right.
which is the water plant.
Right.
The city had to come up with $533 million in
Not free
bonds to
money.
support it. So we still might have to come up with some of the financing, but maybe not all of
Not
it.
all of it. And
Right.
ideally, much less than a quarter, 1.75.
But we don't know, it's speculative.
Yeah.
Ralph.
Not sure.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes, I was just want to make a comparison with the Prospect Lake, filtration plant. When they experienced the problem, they found out that, there was inadequate, hurricane protection rating on that structure. And they were able to increase it from a Cat 3 to, let's say, Cat 5. And also, is that same kind of ability going to be, I'm tying it into City Hall, is that same kind of owner ability able to be with the City Hall design build project?
Depends on the method of procurement. It depends on what the agreement are. There's so many different, I can't really answer that question wholly because there's so many different factors that can.
Because
Well, we can decide it to be a Cat 5 if that's what we decide as a design.
But- Well, my point is that we have to have some kind of flexibility in order to pay for if the design was inadequate.
From a P3 perspective you're talking about, if someone
Yeah.
submitted it and we
or-
accepted it.
Like a water. And then, want to make sure that there's a provision in there so that the city can jump in and say, hey, we need a Cat 5 as opposed to a Cat 3.
I think we're also.
That's,
no,
that
guys,
is true of all methods, by the way.
Any method, right.
We're gonna have direct control over that. And we're gonna be able to have input primarily with all the methods. And the one that you have most input would be your design bid build. You probably have less with some others. But I think in all cases, we will be involved as an owner to, whether it's a Cat 5 or whatever other requirements we're seeking, we can go ahead and be involved in that. So,
I knew the answer, I just wanted it to, because it's already been done.
right.
Okay, Mike,
Do we have an idea what an incremental amount of debt could potentially do to the credit rating? I mean, do we have any guidance from the agencies or any?
Don't have any idea on that. I mean, we're a AAA rated agency now.
Mhm.
As long as our financials stay strong and we stay within the parameters of our debt management policy, we should be fine. And a part of the presentation will go over what that is right now.
okay, Marco?
So, you're gonna go over this presentation?
Well, I wasn't because I'm gonna have Aaron come up. I just walked up when you had that question about bond capacity. Even though I typically would lead these, I am not gonna be here on the 23rd. So I want my deputy to lead this for you guys because he will be the one representing finance for me at the 23rd meeting, okay? All right, Aaron, come on up.
Be sure you give them enough money.
Amen.
I'll take that now.
Well, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity, to talk with you all this afternoon about, the city's debt and this debt portfolio. And actually, I want to start off by thanking Glenn for kind of going through this quickly, because now I can take my full 2 hours. I'll make sure I got this first. All right. Well, I think but I was told that, to try to keep it brief and not get away all of my students, if you all want to do that, we'll have French today. So that being said, I think everyone here knows and understands that the city governments and the municipalities as a whole that were given the ability to issue tax and tax rebates on qualifying projects. And so what I wanted to do for the neighbors on this particular side, we sent to was to kind of relay to them what the city's current overall portfolio of debts looks like. Essentially, there are about 8 different categories of debt that we issued. And they're really broken out into 2 subcategories. That means governmental debt and the enterprise debt. All belongs to the government as a whole, but they are underneath a different format generally. Your governmental debt totaling about $395 million here, is essentially that debt. Part of it is paid by $233 million of their body tax and authority of the state, of the city. And then the other ones, as Linda indicated just a while ago, are based on other revenues that the city collects. Part of our operations could be tax dollars from gas tax and other things of that nature, but not necessarily actual tax. And then your other subcategory is the enterprise funds, stormwater, water and sewer. And as you see there, that water and sewer really is 953 million of our $1.4 billion worth of debt outstanding belongs to the water and sewer category. And so just, once again, just give neighbors an opportunity to understand and appreciate it.
Okay, yes, Martha.
So I have a question regarding that number, actually, that's why I was waiting, the 953 million. I understand that's include the Prospect Lake, that 600 million fund, so another 400 million is the previous debt, or?
Correct. That's correct.
So in the top of the 400 million, we decided to build 600 million, sorry.
Well, some of that debt that you're looking at is some of that debt in that 900 outside of the Prospect Lake go back to 2003.
Okay.
And those debt issues will only be 30 plus years, plus for 30 years in duration on average normally. And so some of that debt goes way back, and there's been some refinancing of the original debt in the interim and so on as we seek to save savings on that. But yes.
And my following question is that debt, the enterprise debt, that is being paid by the water and sewer rates.
Yeah,
That's correct.
yeah.
So everything governmental debt, it's paid by our taxes.
No. The first line up there, your general obligation bond, that would be your annual tax. That is the category that is backed by the full faith and credit of the government or city itself. The other categories could be, like I said earlier, it could be there are other revenues that the city brings in aside from the ad valorem. And so we do bring in other
Okay.
revenues for these.
So not ad valorem, it's the only one that pays fully by taxes. Okay.
Just if I could just clarify for my own mind, under special obligation pension funding, that was where the previous speaker said would the 200 million would go.
So,
No.
so I believe what Linda was saying was that, that's so there's been a lot of discussion that it'd probably be less likely that we would get approval from citizens to issue that, or to add general obligation bond.
Right.
So it would likely be that we'd have to absorb the cost of the debt in the budget. So really what that means is we identify revenues that are part of our ongoing operating budget. For pension obligation bond, they identified a lot of the state sharing revenues like communication service taxes, gas tax, other things that we get from the state. That's what is pledged to secure the special obligation bond.
And what would we pledge to secure this bond for
It'd be probably the same revenues.
Well, non-ad valorem. And so I wanted to make a point to you. This here is a bond, this is a loan, and they're both using the same source, which is non-ad valorem. Okay, and what we did with the special obligation pension funding is taken from that non-ad valorem revenue that we have, and so we're gonna designate specific revenues from non-ad valorem to guarantee the debt payment.
Okay.
So it's still all non-ad valorem, it's just that this one here is listed differently because this is an actual bond rated by the rating agencies. This was a loan that we did many years ago, 2011, and we're almost done paying for it. That's why it's only $1.7 million left over.
Got it.
Okay, and I think, yeah, so that's what this was. This is for radio equipment they did back in.
And you're confident that within that, those funding sources that could be dedicated to paying off those bonds, that we have enough other revenue coming in to cover another 200 million?
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. No,
Capacity
we've done the analysis and we do. Yeah, we've done the analysis. Right now, the city earns in revenue close to 370 million, 380 million.
Mhm.
120 million of it is ad valorem, the rest of it is non-ad valorem.
And that's enough to cover both the pension one and another one for City Hall.
Absolutely.
If I can chime in, that's capacity, it's not actual enough money, right? So we're using that right now to pay for other budgeted expenses. So you'd have to cut something else or increase another revenue in order to cover it within the existing budget. So she's talking about debt capacity,
Yeah, I'm
not
talking
budget
about,
capacity.
I'm talking about debt capacity as in the city's debt policy
Uh-huh.
to issue
Right.
debt. Laura's gonna talk about whether or not the budget can support it, and if we add,
We're using.
I think we're estimating $12 million or something like that for $200 million in pension obligation
That's
bonds.
what it would cost.
And that 12 million per year would need to be supported by increased revenue. If not, you have to reduce services somewhere else to balance the budget.
Oh, so we don't have a truckload of money.
Debt capacity, you have the ability to raise revenue to make, to balance the budget.
Okay, so whether you're raising ad valorem taxes to pay for it, or you're raising this other revenue to pay for it.
But I don't know if it's easy to raise the other revenues. A lot of it is state shared, which is fixed and derived from different things. So, yeah, you would have to find some savings to balance the budget.
No more sidewalks, huh?
Right. Maybe.
Okay. All right,
Okay, well, I think.
so I think for purposes of the presentation on the 23rd, I think we could like pick this up a little bit, and we can't get into this kind of discussion on the 23rd. This would, first of all, a lot of this is gonna put everybody to sleep. We have to talk about, paring this down a little bit, but we certainly should not be getting into this, because it will just, the meeting will just,
Cost savings to the taxpayer.
really. Okay, I mean, this detail is for us to worry about. Okay, yes, can we continue? Thank you.
Okay, next slide, types of bonds, it really was an effort just to give the neighbors an opportunity to understand what's in the city's food bank.
This follows the slide previously, just explains what those are.
Exactly.
Good,
It's
good,
just
good.
to give them an indication of what the general obligation bonds are, how they're backed by the full effect conversion of the city. Revenue bonds, as like I say, it's really a regular indication of the previous discussion we just had. Of where those dollars are coming from, gas tax, utility and so on. And then conduit bonds and certificates of participation here.
Can we
Currently, the
just-
city does not have any conduit bonds outstanding, nor do we have any certificates of participation. However, just depending upon what this is ultimately decided, these
Good.
potentially could be in place.
Can I make a suggestion for this audience, okay? Would you just say, when you say municipal bonds, okay, and give an example of what we're paying for with a municipal bond, the general obligation bond, what are we paying for? Revenue bond, just as an example, because to tell people revenue bonds, that they're not gonna appreciate that, but you say revenue bonds were used to pay for prospect, whatever project it is, then that makes some sense to them, okay? And then we quickly move along.
Okay, so for instance, your general obligation bonds, things that we have paid for.
Yeah,
Recent
just an example, you don't have to all list them all, just an example, so
police
Yeah.
report,
Oh.
for instance.
put it right in there.
Okay.
It's a slide up here for
Yeah.
what the city has. When he's done, you'll
Right.
see the water treatment plant and you'll see the police headquarters in a slide.
Yeah, so there
So
are
he
two,
can flick to that.
there's two
Yeah.
side by,
Combine the slide, okay.
you get to a couple of examples. As indicated, there was just a discussion of what's in the city's food bag, in terms of what we potentially could look at in terms of that. And these are more of the traditional ones. The next slide essentially kind of talks about the food bag again, essentially, but in those alternative types of funding, as well as those that have kind of been mentioned in your surveys that would concern, sounds like the neighbors have been concerned about. And so public-private partnerships, transit-oriented development, which essentially, those are, transit is really more for those who are eco-conscious, and that is what they're trying to make sure and ensure that they provide grants for those projects that would be centrally or located near transit.
Is that federal money or state money?
Federal. Yeah, this is federal money.
Federal, could you put that in, please?
Sure, absolutely. Similar thing with the transportation and infrastructure finance innovation. I used to work at the Port Authority in Dyke, Florida, and we used to utilize this type of, all the time, and you see your ports, one of the primary places that utilize these funds. Here again, the dollars, the grant dollars that we see. Depending upon where we end on that and how that correlates with the grant purpose, maybe an opportunity for us to take advantage of that as well.
Great, and that's state or federal money?
Perfect.
Federal money, so both the transit-oriented development, and transportation infrastructure are federal grants.
Yes.
Could you please put that in there? Thank you.
All right. Really quick, the TIFIA though is not really a grant, it's a loan that's provided to us that we have to repay, kind of like we did with Rivia. With a part of the stormwater project with the water infrastructure, that we had a loan that we got from the EPA. This is the same thing. This would be a loan we would get. It's not a grant. So
Thank you.
it's repayable.
Yeah.
You have to pay that back.
I think people need to stop.
Understand.
I think people understand. They don't understand TIA.
Right.
And essentially, they offer free programs.
Now, what?
They offer free programs in TIFIA, a direct loan, a loan enhancement or guarantee, and a line of credit are the three programs.
Point. Loan is all they need to know. That's a loan that has to be paid back. Mike.
Are the terms of these loans typically better than what the city can procure at floating its own bond? I mean, is there any advantage to the loan as opposed to?
Normally the bottom line rates are generally slightly better, but the issue becomes sometimes is whether or not it's in our benefit to adhere to the requirement
Yeah.
of getting that loan. So sometimes there are a lot of stipulations on the loan for
Not worth it.
$6. So
Right.
it just depends on each project as to whether or not it's worth.
But
Okay,
just
thank
for
you.
what it's worth, public-private partnership is not money. It's not free money. So it's really not an alternative funding. I wouldn't even put it in
This
there.
is the old adage, there ain't no such thing as free money.
Yeah, well,
However,
you're saying these are alternative delivery structures. It's right. What these are alternative delivery is private partnerships, but the others are funding sources. So this slide to me is mixed up. We shouldn't have public-private partnership on this slide because that's a delivery method. It's not a funding method.
well, no, it can be a funding method. Some of these public private partnerships, people come along with their own dollars. And that's one of the benefits of a public private, that's one of the benefits of a public private partnership. Essentially, there are a couple of them, and they bring along the private sector expertise, innovation, financing capabilities that we as a government entity can't necessarily tap into.
You're preaching to the choir here. We've been there. We've been there. But I'm talking about a group of people who are there on a Saturday morning who don't really need to know this stuff. I mean, what we need to know is the first slide about the bonding. It's important. Everybody understands the bonds. We pay taxes, we pay water and sewer bill. Everybody understands that. But if we are also, and now that we've identified that there are some federal loans, there are some federal grants, that's on the previous slide. And what we need to know, what this slide needs to sort of demonstrate is that, there are other places that we can look for money. And if you want to say, okay, you can use public-private partnerships to leverage some money, to generate money, you still have to pay it back. And you have to pay it back with interest.
Well-
So to me, it's very confusing, but
Yes, and no, for instance, with the Prospect Lake
right,
power plant.
right?
Utility plant. That vendor, that contract is coming along with some of their dollars. We're not gonna pay them necessarily back with dollars that we currently have of this kind of instance. It'll be paid back through the operation and maintenance of that facility. Sure, we would have had to do anyway. We would have had to
No,
pay-
no.
We would have to pay someone dollars.
We're
Whether it's city.
included in the money that we're paying them every year to operate that plant, okay? Is repaying the 125 million that they put in. They're not giving us 125 million. Okay, so
All right.
again, you're preaching to the
I'll
choir.
note that, what what I'm trying to read, and I don't want to hold you up, I understand, and well, I'll say this first of all. If you want it gone, it's gone, first of all, but whether or not P3s bring added to the table. I can tell you about a P3 that I did at Port Authority where they bought $100 million for the thing. And so that just allowed, and they built a terminal there, on their dollars. And then the only thing that we as a port authority, put into it was we put another 75 million in because we had the bonding ability, but they paid all of the debt. And so it's just.
It's just like the water treatment plant. It's just exactly what we did with the water treatment plant. Okay,
I agree with you. Let's move on.
we gotta move on.
All right, so here again, what we're just trying to say is that, wherever we end up with actually this financial plan is going to be largely dependent upon what the ultimate decision is actually what this facility will look like. And then you were talking earlier about.
I'm sorry.
Recent
Excuse me,
projects.
just a minute, she has a question?
Sure.
Can we add the dollar amounts to the recent examples? Like the parks project, how much was actually issued in the bond?
They're on the next slide.
Okay.
The two examples are gonna be the treatment plant and the police headquarters and that information.
And in terms of-
200 billion
or
200
billion. That they approve for that.
No, I think what we need to, again, it's the people who are in the room. The people that, when you say parks, projects, general obligation bonds, $200 million. Okay, just put it all on that slide. Police headquarters, 144 million, 100 million bonds, 40 million loans. Stormwater treatment projects, enterprise funds, $300 million. It's the audience. It really is the audience.
I'll say this, I'm 100%, I agree with you, because I've got cheat notes. On that very thing, so I get it. I understand.
Okay.
We can do it on these sides as well. And so you've actually just kind of taken my presentation, just up and indicated what will work. And so that is simply what we're trying to do here, is indicate that there are some recent projects that have been done.
And Cheryl, for the benefit of making this thing move a little quicker, I really don't think we need recent examples of master plan redevelopments in Florida. I mean, nobody is gonna be interested in that on a Saturday
Okay.
morning. So you make the slide a lot, smaller.
All
Okay,
right, so then we're tracking
strike recent examples of plan developers.
and do.
So just take all that out.
Yeah, just take that. It's Saturday morning.
Can I play devil's
Okay,
advocate? I almost think that you could stop this presentation for the purposes of public consultation with the last page being this summary of bond or existing bond portfolio, and just conclude that the city can afford within their reasonable limits to do a new city hall, and you just discuss various methods, because this is getting very complicated. And, as the chair has said, it's Saturday morning and people are not there to think deeply, I think.
Yeah, like certainly these last two slides, going into the details of these two projects. It's not necessary. Especially if in the previous slide, you have police department, the $100 million bond and $40 million loan, and that's it, it's over, it's finished, okay?
So take those
Okay,
two
so
slides
Take
out.
those two slides out.
All right, so then just for clarity, so I know what the homework is.
Yeah.
I could keep in slide one, the summary of the bond portfolio.
Yeah.
Examples where each of the methods of procurement is discussed, it would be good to give an example of where that procurement method is used on a big project. Like the police station, P3, the water plant.
This slide does do that though. If you look at
Yeah,
it
it
down
does.
at the
Yeah,
bottom.
but it's too much,
Got it.
Way too much detail.
So-
So that's bring this up at least one level, okay? One level up, it's way too much detail.
Do you want me to bring it onto my slides?
No,
No.
we don't need
It belongs on here.
So I think the idea behind these two slides are that they're two very different procurement methods and the timeline that it takes associated with each of those methods. Like if you're doing a P3, you can claim the thing that we keep on saying is that we're doing it faster, with someone else doing it.
right,
And it shows how much it's costing the city in terms of debt issuance associated with that mechanism.
yeah, but
As opposed to like the police headquarters, the timeline is a lot longer. And the debt issuance associated with that, so maybe we incorporate that in the other
Yeah.
budget.
No, really, it's, with all due respect,
Yeah.
it's true what you say, but it's Saturday morning.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And you know,
Those are-
all you gotta do is say one time P3 on the pros is it gets done faster. And on the other one, it takes a little more time. That's all you gotta say, really, for this crowd.
I mean, I think that it's, the details of the timeline fascinating, but the crowd's not gonna care.
Right.
They're like, up below.
That's the third cup of coffee on this one.
But we have to forget about the counts on the P3. I think that's very important. It's faster, but it's also the fact that operational management, the cost of the city, I just, I don't know if we're not gonna have a Swiss cheese as something it's built, because the maintenance and operations is actually carried by somebody else.
Somebody
It's gonna be for profit. So
You should have been here when we were doing water
I
treatment.
know.
Okay,
All right.
I have.
all right, Terry, anything else?
Clarity, so I know what to go back into.
Mhm.
There's only 4 slides here, and so I just want to make sure we're
Click
keeping
it,
this
1,
one.
2, 3, 4, let's see them.
All right, this is one.
1, 2,
We keep this one.
right, and this one you're gonna say general obligation bonds such as,
With examples.
with
Right,
examples,
examples.
yeah, 3, that's good. And 4,
We want
That's it.
number- we want to-
And then detail about
And you
Parks
don't want the other
project.
two.
now take
200.
out the recent examples of master plan developments comes out,
Right, got that.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
okay? All right, you're a trooper,
Appreciate your time.
thank you. Okay, so, Cheryl, we're gonna wrap this up then.
Yes. So going past all those slides. We're gonna do the breakout session, but before that, we're gonna have the survey.
Let's talk about the questions.
Yes.
Okay,
So, rank how, excuse me, rank how you would like the city to be financed and the design construction of a new city hall. So,
guys, let's talk about that. I mean, does anybody think people are gonna, after this presentation, or before this right after this presentation, do you think that this ranking of how the city is gonna finance design and construction of the new hall is?
No.
No.
And I feel like this is actually advocating for 3P. I think we're building a city hall that we never gonna own, really. We're never gonna own the building
Well-
for the 3P.
We all have our P3 stories, okay? But that's not for today.
No, but it's pretty tell how much it costs.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the sense of talking about? Like, it's like,
Really.
Yeah.
We got a big problem in
Exactly,
this,
yeah.
in this. So, let's
Yeah.
let's
Sarah,
think, rank how you would like. I don't know what to say about that question, other than nobody's gonna be able to answer that question.
Remove it, we can remove it.
What do you think, gentlemen, lady?
On one.
Take out one?
I think it's easier.
Oh, ask it a different way. How would you ask it? Well, the real question is, do we want to know what they know?
I don't
I don't think we wanna know.
It's not, because they're not gonna know the difference between.
Right, they just learned the difference
Yeah.
between general obligation and a revenue.
Right.
bond. And now they have to make a ranking decision?
No,
That's
no,
not.
no, let's just take that out. This is what
And instead of ranking, what about just saying, would you be willing? to pay?
They really don't know.
They don't-
They don't know, they don't
They
know.
don't know if they're gonna pay a millage rate?
Well, but that's the next
That's the
question.
next
The next
question.
question's a good question.
Okay, so. Good, all right.
Okay.
Number 2, how much would you be willing to pay annually for the new city hall? And so that's the.
Okay, the people in that room are not living in $500,000
Yes.
houses. They're not.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
But-
Even less than
but-
500,000.
But I know. So we should use, what?
I don't know, call it a,
Well, you know the median household income, Ms. Linda.
Yeah, so are you guys taking out question 1?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm gonna say revenue bonds is not a millage rate increase, it wouldn't be supported by that anyway.
It would need to come with an increase in millage rate or a reduction in expense, right?
so the easy, we're not doing the.
So we're taking number 1 out.
Yeah.
Okay. So
All right.
you want the staff to use, well, you know, the median household.
It's actually
the
even more,
median
actually.
taxable value
It was
of
right around
a
this.
home
539.
in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, it was right around.
All right, that was just an observation. I should not have done that. Move along.
So, and also, there should be one extra word, I think, extra. How much extra would you be willing to pay annually?
How much more?
More would you be willing?
Okay, how much more?
That's a good question.
How much are you able?
Well, that's a different question.
Never mind the one. I wanna pay a 2 or 300, but I can only afford 10.
Well, you know what? You know what? Maybe that should be, oh, well, there is zero.
There's a zero.
Zero. No, I bet
It's
you,
easy.
you'll get a lot of zeros. Okay, let's go on to 3.
Okay.
Nobody's.
3 is rank the importance of the following considerations in the procurement process.
Timing.
Maybe we change this to procurement and financing and procurement process to do both.
Can I have all of above? They all important.
Let's rank highest to lowest.
Oh,
Why don't you ask how important 1 through 5, and then for these 3 bullet points? Because I think they're all important.
they are.
I think we should have a 4th
They're all
bullet point that
five.
says all of the above.
Well, it's, you rank them, like what's the most important to what's the least important?
What James is saying is, you give it a score, 1 through 5, so James would give it 5 on the first bullet, 5 on the second
Okay.
bullet.
And 5 on the
5
third.
bullet.
So that,
But what does that really tell you then? Like what's your most important thing if all of them are 5s?
Not everybody.
No, they
They're all
don't think it's
important.
important, they just.
that means they're all important. If there's a better way to word it, Laura, then.
Part of the following considerations in the procurement process, and then put 1 through 5 on each one of them.
Well,
We were thinking in.
So the thought here, just to hear me out on this one, the thought here is at the end of this, if overall project time is more important to somebody, you might choose one set of things. If the community says maintaining public ownership overall is the most important thing, then you would choose a different method. If everyone just says all of these are really important, it doesn't get you anywhere. Right? So that was the thought of having the ranking the levels of importance, because based on what's most important to the public, then you would choose different approaches.
So then ask to select one.
You could do select one, but then maybe you don't know what their second one is, right? It's, we can definitely switch it. It's, the survey tool will allow you to do everything that's really important.
So in your approach, your rationale for this. So overall project timing, including procurement, contract execution, that would, people said that's most important. And that pushes our decision, our guideline to a specific funding approach,
Yes.
right?
Or procurement approach.
Okay, the second one is probably for P3 or not P3.
Then against.
Against,
Oh, well, yeah.
Yes.
and then
Or,
the third would be something else.
Right.
That was your rationale.
yeah, the rationale is if you know what's most important to the community, then you could design a procurement and financing approach that incorporated that.
Just this one, this listen says, rate these, the following 3 methods according to their importance to you,
Yep, that's what that is.
and then the 1, 2, 3.
Right, so that's what it is. It's like, which is the top, so it lets you drag it, but we could do 1, 2, 3, but really, we use this in a prior survey as well. So what they'll do is if this is number 1, they'll drag it to the top. If this is number 2, they'll drag it.
Okay.
to number 2.
Well,
So
why
for the
don't,
paper survey, what we'll need to do is put in parens and say 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
I mean, if you keep it this way.
would it be more easy for people to understand if instead of saying things like overall project timing, including procurement and contract execution, how fast can we get this job done, or something more, less technical? The amount of time it takes to get the project done.
The speed
So
of
that-
project.
okay,
Speed of
so then
completion.
you question. 4, number 4,
Yeah.
it's, they all identical, one is for procurement method, another is for financing, but they kind of leading the same path, so.
Oh, right, they're all the same.
Yeah, one was procurement, one was for financing.
I hope we always have a transparent, fair and competitive solicitation process. process,
Yeah.
because
You cannot have a
the
bad
converse of
competitive.
that would be untransparent, unfair.
Always have that. That's really not a question.
So maybe we can combine this and
Combine
select all.
That would be the RFP process.
Well, I
Well,
mean, it's
If
true.
you go back to the
all
methods,
processes.
if you go back to the methods, some methods lead to more competition than others.
The P3.
That,
So does an RFP lead to more competition? P3 is not the only way that leads to competition. So you can't, James, you hit it right on the head. This is leading. The only question that I've seen on this so far is the second question. How much more are you willing to pay for a city hall? That's the only question I've seen so far. That is a Saturday morning question.
So maybe if we put, put these two together, are you saying, to take that fair and competitive? Or like the level of competition doesn't?
How about we just make one second question is,
Okay.
what's the most important thing to you? How fast this project can get done, if the city if the city owns the land and the building, and, you know, like squish them all together, just make one other question. How much are you willing to pay, and what's important to you? How fast the project gets done, think of threes, three or four. Yeah, how fast it gets done, how economically we can do it, how we can provide all of the amenities. No, how economically we can do it. I got two so far. And somebody think of three questions that are Saturday morning questions. This really should only be two questions on Saturday morning.
And really, I don't like speed of construction, because that's kind of what you manage upfront, and you put the timeline on the project upfront. You can tell them build this in 2 years, build it in 4 years. It really depends from your criteria.
How about a third question? Maintaining public input through all stages of the bidding process, or through all stages of the process. Because P3, the public kind of gets closed off from at a certain point, whereas design, build, I think it's much open.
Again, we're leading them.
Can I
We're
show you
leading
number
them.
5?
Where's five? Oh, there's a five?
Yeah,
Yeah, what's
because
five?
it kind of leads in, right in the. Because it has some questions you were talking about.
Oh, that's a good question. That's a wonderful question. Let's leave that one. 5 is in.
Okay, 5 is in. Okay. Go back to 3 and 4.
Let's
Steve.
go back to
Yes.
3 and 4.
Three and four
Let's
is
see if
fine.
we can combine 3 and 4 into more general questions.
Yeah, just rank the importance of the following consideration: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right. Speed of
Speed,
construction,
speed,
maintaining public
speed.
ownership, fair and
Exactly.
competitive solicitation.
Generally, following consideration:
Total cost.
overall,
Most economical,
pick 5 of those.
I like the intergenerational equity. Well, I think it'll be interesting to see how that.
Yeah.
It's with me.
I know it'll be.
I think that's a question, that's a legitimate question. What that means, who's gonna pay for that?
Right.
I think,
But
I
it's
think
like the
it's-
water treatment, plant. We're gonna be paying for that for 30 years, well, I'm not gonna be around in 30 years.
Yeah, well, that's why we did it that way.
I hope you were good.
So I say, let it go till the end.
I hope you're good.
Well, we're gonna keep it.
Can we just sort of leave it to your,
Okay.
Yeah.
let's trust you on putting 3 and 4 together.
Let's do one.
We're leaving in
Yeah,
5,
those are
and
right.
number 6 is in the.
Yeah, 5 is good. Everything else is wonderful. I love anything else.
All right, so we'll be going back, so it's the same format of breakout sessions now, this is what we are saying to them. If they're considering on breakout. Same
Okay,
thing that they built, gone over 5 years.
this is gonna be a tough one. This is gonna be a tough one. All right, thank you so much.
Oh,
Anybody have
thank
any other questions? Cheryl?
Just to say, I think that Cheryl and the staff did a good job on this, because this is not that great.
Not gonna happen. I'm gonna
business of saving dollars.
I understand. No, I think this is the most challenging.
Most challenging.
Because it's talking to my, and we've got to get the cost of things like that, and that's not gonna be easy. On. That we can
And Cheryl, could I just ask you one thing?
speak
At
and
the end, the last slide,
feel.
the last
Yes,
slide.
so you're talking about.
Could you put the webpage for the infrastructure passport up on?
Oh, that's right, yes, yes.
Because I keep forgetting to tell everybody.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so we,
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Not
It's coming. Okay, guys, we gotta get together. This is important. This is an important piece. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
So
Yeah.
We're gonna build hourly now, so. I was gonna point it out. Flex in the door.
Okay. Speed boss, let's go.
Well, yeah, I'll start with these.
Please, yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm James Ferraro, from the Ferraro Law Firm. We've been retained by the city to represent it in the PFAS litigation. We also represent about a dozen other public water systems around South Florida. We represent about a dozen more in Georgia. So I do have a good vantage point as far as what's going on kind of nationally. And as well, we are also on the Claims Executive Committee in the multi-district litigation that's in front of Judge Gergel in South Carolina. So basically where all of these cases are being consolidated, right? So
Thank
just an overview, just a quick timeline of where we are. So we were hired in August 2022. A little, about 2 months later, we filed a PFAS complaint in that multi-district litigation in South Carolina. The lawsuit named approximately 32 defendants, including DuPont and 3M, which I'll get into in a moment because there have been some settlements announced with respect to those two defendants. The claims that are being brought in this lawsuit, primarily drinking water claims, but there's also claims for property damage, so soil contamination, potential soil contamination, any potential wastewater treatment. These settlements that I'm about to talk about only apply to drinking water claims. So we also, and I've been working with Alan and his department in gathering information. We filed a plaintiff fact sheet last month. That basically is just a series of questions about the system. There's some information about the new water treatment plant, which I'll get to as well and tell you how that kind of plays into the PFAS litigation. As I said, we've been in constant communication with the utilities department. What we've been gathering, the primary information we need for this case and for these settlements is flow rates, how much water the system is treating and pulling from the aquifer, the Biscayne aquifer, and then the PFAS test result, which they've sampled all of the wells. We have all of that data. So we're in a good position with respect to moving forward those two settlements that I'm going to talk about. So the two settlements, as I said, the DuPont settlement, in one important point, I noted on the prior slide, this is not a class action case. The city has its own complaint filed. However, where it's confusing, these two settlements are being settled as a class. It's just a mechanism to settle the case because there are so many potential plaintiffs. There's about 14,000 public water systems across the country. Some of them have a claim in this case because they have a PFAS detection in your system and some don't. But it's just a mechanism to try to settle this. So the first settlement, the DuPont settlement, they have already put into a qualified settlement fund 1.185 billion for affected public water systems. That's basically anyone who has a detection in 1 part per trillion. Then the 3M settlement, they're paying between 10.5 billion to 12.5 billion. Now, the reason for the difference that is such a larger number in the 3M settlement is because they just have the largest amount of liability. 3M made a specific type of PFAS. I'm not going to get too technical, but they made a specific type of PFAS. And Alan and his team are aware of this, called PFOS. You're finding it everywhere, all over the globe. And that was only made by 3M. So they have a huge problem on their hand, and they have a good portion of the liability. And again, this only covers drinking water claims. So this is
Wait, but go back to that last slide.
sure.
Who gets to pick, who gets to feed at this trough? Any public water system?
Any public water system in the country that has a detection, and it's actually left out of this presentation, but I believe in what you have printed. There's actually been charts that have been posted, and this is available on, I believe it's pfaswatersettlement.com. Those are charts that basically set forth how the settlement model is gonna work. Now, we don't have exact numbers in place yet, but that's generally how you get to an estimate.
So let me ask you, all the people, all the cities that are in this, are in this lawsuit, we are paying to be in this lawsuit.
No, you're not paying, we're gonna get paid. The city will get money out of these settlements.
Yeah, okay, but so will every other city.
They will, this pie, that pie will be divvied up accordingly, based on how much water you treat and what your test results are.
I'm making it go away.
So do you think that for 3M, the 10 to 12 billion is enough?
Oh, and I'm gonna get to that in a second. The answer to that is no.
Okay.
There will never be, so, and this is, I'll kind of move forward to exactly that point that I'm about to make. This is just an overview of the current system. We're looking at 37 wells, so just how this works in practice is I make a claim for each well. And there's this whole formula and we're going through that now. I don't have exact numbers. We're gonna get those, I think, in the next couple of months. How this works with respect to the new treatment plant.
Okay.
You guys are in a great position with this. I know there's the numbers were thrown around. I think I'm wrong with the 543, I think it's 522. I'll leave that to the finance folks, but as far as the bond for this, this is important though, because this is an ion exchange facility. That technology does treat for PFAS. It's one of the preeminent technologies. So once this is done, these regulations that are coming out, they're expected to be pretty low. The city will be in a really good spot. So that's the good news outside of the
Be in a good spot to what?
treat PFAS.
Well,
As far as making sure you're regulatory compliant.
We're gonna treat the PFAS. That's not a question. The question is, will we be able to pull from this settlement money to treat the PFAS?
It will help offset, it'll help offset some of that cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question, I guess EPA hasn't established the criteria for the PFAS. And so I guess obviously our nanofiltration plant filter can take the PFAS out. As opposed to the 5-ash existing water treatment plant that's apparently cannot. So I guess it's difficult right now to arrive at a number until the EPA really comes with a fixed. It's going to be a very small amount so that you have a basis for.
So the lowest it's gonna be is the maximum contaminant level will be 4 parts per trillion. That's the lowest they're gonna go. This settlement, the way the model works in that chart that's probably in your printed materials, you can see. If you look at the y-axis, there's 4 parts, the PFAS score is 4 parts per trillion. If you look above that, you'll see 2. You'll notice the number jumps dramatically once you hit 4. Why? Because those are systems that would be at the regulatory limit or above it. However, the EPA, there have been some rumblings. I was actually at a conference on Thursday. I spoke in front of the AWWA, American Water Works Association, and there are some rumblings from folks that are way more technical than me, that are engineers, Hazen and Sawyer, folks like that. And they think maybe it'll be 10 parts per trillion. But with respect to this settlement, it doesn't matter. Still gonna they're gonna be looking at it and the model's gonna work based on assuming that the regulatory limit's gonna be 4. So I hope for all of our clients out there that it's 10, because that's much more manageable than 4. 4 is pretty much as low as you could go. That's very low. And it's obviously, it's caused a lot of concern for public water systems around the country. And people think that's just, way too far afield. So, and to answer one of the questions as far as whether this is enough, this will never be enough. Because the total liabilities have been estimated. I mean, there's been Bloomberg articles, Wall Street estimates, that they say that the PFAS liabilities nationwide could be $500 billion. You could DuPont, 3M is a good example, right? Should it be higher? Yeah. But the company's worth only $50 billion. If they were to actually pay dollar for dollar what their actual liability is, they'd be bankrupt 5 times over. It's just not. I wish there were more. And, you know, this question gets brought up a lot as far as whether going out and getting state or federal dollars will affect these settlements. The answer to that is absolutely not. If there's money available, and go get it. Whether it's a state revolving fund, if there's the bipartisan infrastructure acts, I know some of that's been more reserved for smaller systems and in very impoverished communities, but that's kind of changing a bit, especially on the federal level. You probably see more dollars there. Again, I know I mentioned this before, these 2 settlements, the DuPont 3M settlements, do not cover property damage claims, wastewater, and stormwater treatment. And then going forward, what we're looking at, these settlements, I do expect that we'll have settlement offers from the settlement administrator for these 2 settlements between probably within the next 6 months. And then hopefully payments being made towards the end of this year, maybe Q1 2025. I won't know that exact number because the big thing that's going to dictate what the number is the level of participation. Now, there's some entities that opted out because either they think they could get more money elsewhere, which I'm glad to talk about that, but that's not possible. And regardless, the city's in. And it depends on how many public water systems that are in actually go make a claim. And I can tell you, I've spoken to several that just don't want anything to do with it for whatever reason. The money's there for them, but they don't want anything to do with it. And that's, you know, so the good news there is that the less people that are in, the more money that goes around for those that are in. Because it's called a claims made class action. So
Just curious, why wouldn't they go for why don't they want to be bothered to make a claim?
I don't know, maybe they're worried about, I don't know, either potential public image. They think they're opening themselves up. So I have no idea. There's various reasons why, but it's money that's there for this specific purpose. It is.
Yeah, well, but Jerry brings up a very good point. Does making a claim make us liable because we did it?
No, you didn't put the PFAS in the water.
Oh, okay.
Unless you had an agreement with 3M.
Oh, okay, I understand, I
You had an
understand.
agreement
Okay.
with 3M to use the stuff.
They're not participating right now because there's still a time to participate. By default, they already there, but one of these decisions, it's really carry your treatment, right? Not a lot of cities, they don't have a plan B for a treatment. So they're gonna raise the question, what are you gonna do about PFAS? Well, number one, that rule is not final by the EPA.
Right.
Like you mentioned, there's a lot of money that the United States has to invest to remove, and it's in the office of budget, has to be approved. We can't have an unfunded mandate.
Right.
And the problem, and I'll be very cautious, we're gonna remove the PFAS saying, because it's ongoing battle with the industry that we would remove the contaminant PFAS 1, 2, 3, 4. They're gonna create PFAS 3, 4, 5. Like different, because that's a combined chemical. So they still Teflon, so the industry works, they're very innovative. They could figure out how to replace that chemical that is gonna be right now mandated by EPA, let's say. They're gonna create another one. And we're gonna be chasing.
It's like designer drugs.
So it is a lot of cautious nationally, and it's like I said, there is probably time to make that decision. But the fact that when you start speaking publicly, you better have a plan. So Fort Lauderdale has a plan. They will make a plan.
So we could-
New water treatment.
We're okay.
The good thing, if I might add, with respect to that, and again, I'm not an engineer or an environmental consultant by any stretch of imagination, but my understanding is that plant, that technology can treat what's shorter chain PFAS. What's happened is you have these longer chain ones that are, they break down less, even slower, and then you have shorter chain ones, which concern is EPA is gonna go look at those and start treating or regulating those and that.
I guess Miami no longer allowing their fire department to put out fuel fires on their well field. Because of the obviously PFAS.
Right.
Yeah, that's one, and the FAA has also changed some of their semi-annual training requirements for PFAS, because for decades it's been required, you had to, if you were a chapter 139 airport, you had to train with it twice a year and test all your.
So James, if God is good, we're gonna end up with $10 million out of the. No, seriously.
No, I mean, I would have to see, once we know the level of participation, I'd be able to come back with a number and I'll present it to
Okay.
the city attorney. But I think the city will do okay. Well, is it, again, will they be compensated dollar for the new water treatment plant? I mean, there were other reasons that
No,
plant
no,
was put in
obviously
operation,
never,
but.
but let me ask Alan the question. At our last meeting, when we talked about PFAS, we talked about we would have to spend more money now on the plant to get out of PFAS, didn't we?
Well, when we, specifically on Prospect,
Yeah,
okay, we are using the technology, the nanofiltration and the ionic chain.
right.
However, it wasn't designed specifically to meet the proposed rules, because when we entered into the agreement, even the proposed rule didn't exist. So now that we know what the proposed at 4 parts per trillion and the other requirements, we're going back and validating that it will fully meet all those requirements and see if there needs to be any modifications to the filters.
So it could be from 0 to God knows what. $0 to God knows what dollars to meet the 0.4.
Well, yes, at this point, I can't tell you a number on it, but we need to certify that our plant does meet that requirement. So we're going through that process now with them.
Okay.
And a lot of it is just verifying the design.
Mhm.
There may be some modifications or changes, but also they haven't finalized the rule yet, so.
So whether it's 0.4 or 10,
Or
Yeah.
10, but we just want to make sure when the plant turns on, that we can certify it is fully meeting those requirements.
we good. I'm good. Anybody else in again? Questions?
John, Commissioner Herbst spoke about this at the groundbreaking ceremony that I attended. He was spot on. Like, this plant, the timing is actually really good. But by the time this all comes into effect, assuming it actually is passed, it'll be in a good position.
Go forth and get us the money.
Try my best.
At this point, whatever they get is
It's great.
something we don't have right now, exactly.
There you go. Okay, let's talk about more money. Let's get Daphne on. We're gonna need that money. You know why?
Thank you.
Because we're not gonna be able to charge our 25% if things don't go our way.
Unlike
Alright.
everybody else,
Jackie?
I don't have a presentation,
Yeah.
so it's more of a conversation, so I'll set the table.
Okay.
So for some of you,
Does everybody know who Daphne is?
I was about to say, for some of you who don't know me, I'm Daphne Sainville, the Public Affairs Manager for the City of Fort Lauderdale. I am their in-house lobbyist as well as the manager over economic and business development. So we are in our last week of legislative session up in Tallahassee, and thankfully I am not there. Even though I will miss the handkerchief drop. They are supposed to end regular session on Friday, March 8th. I believe they finalized some portions of the budget late yesterday and today. I haven't been able to watch it while here, but I've been checking in with our lobbyists. We've secured 5 projects. 2.5 million for Breakers Avenue. We secured 1.5 million for sidewalks ADA. I believe we had homeless mental health housing. We requested 500,000 and yesterday we saw we only got 175,000, but it was to be expected that there were reductions in the health and human services section of the bill, and I'll explain why certain reductions were made. The water list came out for stormwater pump generators. We had asked for 700,000. We have received 175, I believe 175, and I'll double check. The numbers we're still trying to get into the supplemental to offset certain costs or to offset certain reductions. And for the last project is Riverland Road. We had requested 240 for some intersections that we wanted to do traffic calming for. We received 60,000. So while the numbers were reduced, we are in a good place because we actually got funding. A lot of projects were zeroed out this year simply because some cities had joined that Form 6 lawsuit. So they lost their funding. Thankfully, the city did not join the Form 6 lawsuit. So we were able to enter into the budget. Reductions were to be expected for certain projects simply because the allocations that were given to certain pots of money in the budget, education, healthcare, human services, transportation, general government, they all get allocated a certain amount of money where the chairs have to make their sacrifices. We like to say with what projects that they need to fund at certain amounts. So because of these allocations, our requests were reduced. However, the legislature has not put out what we call the sprinkle list, which is a supplemental list of funding for projects with exiting legislators. So legislators who are in their last term, who are leaving, want to bring some more money home, technically sometimes get more money in that sprinkle list. This year, because A, it's an election year, and B, the state is trying to put more money in reserves, which is also why there was a reduction in funding for a lot, especially in that surprisingly HHS, Healthcare and Human Services. It was an odd session. It is surprising simply because we've seen them put money aside in reserves before, but not to this extent. Especially seeing, so normally for budget conference, all committees meet. So you have agriculture, you have the tourism, transportation, you have education, and HHS. HHS didn't meet for 4 days. So for almost a week, we did not know where any projects were in that HHS budget. And usually that is one of the easiest ones that they have their allocations and they know where money is going to. And usually that budget is one of the first to close out. Usually the ones that throw wrenches into the budget conference is higher ed and agriculture when the water list project comes out. So it's kind of done a topsy-turvy this year. But we knew it was gonna happen. We're okay. We wanted some more. We're looking for supplemental. We've been talking to our lobbyists, our contractors, and also in communication with our sponsors on the Senate and House side. So I've been making phone calls all weekend, well, outside of last week, earlier today. So we've reached out to see if we can get in the supplemental list. But if we don't, then our next step is to talk to the governor's office again. We've already had our meetings with them and with the governor. So we think our projects would be, spared the veto pen, but we can never be certain until June. So when he's done line iteming his vetoes and signs the budget into law, that's when we'll know for sure on the state side if we've received all the money that we have been allocated by the state. But overall, it's a win. It's approximately $4.485 million that we would be bringing home this year.
Roosevelt, you have a question?
Yes, this is one that I know it's a new project, but it's not a new need. And that is they're creating this committee of street raising in the city of Fort Lauderdale, especially in the flood prone areas.
The fortified?
No, the ULI project.
This is a ULI workshop that we have next week. It's not a committee.
Okay.
This is a planning project on developing criteria for raising some of our city streets, the ones that are the one, we'll never see money for that for years. I mean, we're in the planning stage.
We can go for federal funds for
Yeah.
that.
But
But
there will be a time when we will be asking
not that
for money
great.
for that.
Yeah.
There will come a time. It's just not now.
That's also funded by the Florida Resilient Grant.
There'll be other places to
That's
look
the
for
free
money.
money, that's very, a
Okay.
lot of those projects can be funded for the grant.
Okay.
And then-
Unless you're getting a text that says we're gonna get more money.
Well, yes, I also have a federal update on our appropriation side that we got late last night, so I wanted to pull that up because I can never remember the projects and the amount, but yesterday evening, as most of you know, if you follow Congress can't decide on how to vote on their continuing resolutions for about 12 pieces of legislation for funding, but they agreed on 6 yesterday. So in those 6, we got our community funding requests, so our earmarks and appropriations, which I think is the first time in a long time that the city has received federal funds, at least through this community funding process. So the first project that we got, and all 3 of them, it's 3 projects that we asked that we got as a request out of the 18 that we threw to see what stuck to the wall. It was 3, 2 were with Representative Moskowitz, 1 was with Sheila McCormick, Sherfless McCormick, I always forget the Sherfless part. But they were all funded through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, so HUD. $720,000 is for the city of Fort Lauderdale's Lauderdale Manors Park multimodal connections. It's been a while since I looked at what the summary of that project is, but I will send this all to you, so you have a breakdown of what we asked for and what it would be used for. The second is for Breakers Avenue. On the federal side, we got $850,000. Which seems like little, but considering that community funding requests usually get axed out of federal congressional spending, this is actually a good sign that they've actually taken on member projects and are funding it for this fiscal year for 2024. And the last one we got was for critical homeless support services for the hotspots, and we got $850,000 for that as well.
And
So
what's that for?
it's for critical to look at critical hotspots for homeless. So it's more towards what we're gonna do to reach a net zero for homelessness funding. So we look at those critical hotspots where most of the homeless congregate, and we look at ways to provide those comprehensive services to them so they no longer congregate at those particular hotspots.
Didn't we try this a few years ago?
It's,
And
but now we have federal dollars to really push.
They're trying to examine with federal. See if it works.
But I'll send a breakdown of how they anticipate in triaging those 3. So we're looking good on state and federal funding when it comes to various projects that we're doing citywide outside of utilities or transportation. So it's more comprehensive and diversifying the portfolio that we send up to the state and to the federal government. Try to be more intentional in spreading the asks, so we're not all putting everything into one pot. Because then you have so it's a strategy in order to get funding. Slowly but surely, little by little, every cent counts. And I've always maintained the mentality, and Marilyn knows something is better than nothing. And just, the long game, just keep trying, and eventually we'll get something. A couple policy updates, vacation rentals. I know that has been of concern to a lot of the community. That bill has not been scheduled to be on the calendar so far, today or tomorrow. We'll know tomorrow if it's going to be on for either Wednesday or Thursday, because they're on a 24-hour notice. So we know 24 hours before session when it's placed on special order. So knock on wood that it is dead, because the last I heard, which was Saturday evening, the Senate sponsor and the House sponsor met, hoping to reconcile their differences, and walked out of the meeting unable to reconcile their differences. So this is the first time that I actually applaud Discord in the state legislature, because it works to our advantage, at least for this piece of legislation. Another bill that I know has been of concern is the municipal utility rate bill. There are 2 versions, 3 bills. There is Senate Bill 104 and House Bill 47. Those 2 bills do not affect the city of Fort Lauderdale, because we do not service cities that have our utility plant in those cities. So for example, while we sell water to Wilton Manors, our plant is not located in Wilton Manors. Therefore, we can continue to issue a surcharge to Wilton Manors. The bill that would affect us, that we are, and the league is strongly opposed to, is House Bill 1277, which is by Husada Cabrera. That bill would eliminate our ability to implement and charge a 25% surcharge to the individuals that we sell water to. So we've been monitoring that language to make sure it does not go onto the bills that we are neutral on. And so far, none of the bills, the bills that don't affect us, one of them, I believe it is Senate Bill 104, is on special order calendar earlier today, this afternoon, but the language, there's been no amendments to see any type of negative language go on there. The League of Cities is monitoring that as well. And we believe that that negative bill will die. However, this is the third year in a row this type of utility bill has been proposed. In the legislature, we are hoping that it will not be proposed or make some movement next year with the incoming House Speaker, Danny Perez. We have a very good relationship with him. Our firms that we have very good relationships with him. I've known him since I was an intern at the county, in some sense, but so we're hoping that he'll listen to our municipal concerns, come down to Broward, come down to Fort Lauderdale and kind of tour the area to see, what is truly needed and what we're doing to fortify, build resilience and sustainability.
Okay, that's good news.
Yes, there are a couple other bills that relate to permitting, regulations, unsolicited proposals, but we already do a majority of what is in the permitting bills. So it's not really a negative impact on us for the more stringent requirements that they have. And with P3s and unsolicited P3s, it's pretty much the same, just revamping the process
Yeah,
on
but
notice.
it's just for everybody's benefit. The modification for the P3 would eliminate the competition portion of it.
Correct.
In other words, now when we get a P3, we have to go through the process and we have to put it out for bid. Well, the new P3 is possible. I don't know if it replaces it or if it's an alternative. They could just submit a P3 and the city can just accept it.
Notice. Well, no, the city has to notice. They have to go through
Notice and
2
findings.
public hearings when the P3 comes through. So they have the choice where they can go through the original process, the same process with the RFP, wait the 30, 60, 90 days.
Right.
And then put it before a commission meeting, or you can skip that process and you can now just have one public hearing noticed and then another public hearing noticed and accept whatever P3 comes your way. And that's the public notice with the opportunity for the public to comment and speak on it.
Right, worse
Same
than,
question.
in my opinion, worse than before. But nevertheless, thank you so much, Daphne. Appreciate you keeping on top of
Very
all
good.
of this.
Thank you.
Status of home rule preemption for EV charging infrastructure.
I have to get back to you on that one. But I believe like those are dead. I think 2 passed, but we were neutral on those.
Okay, guys and gals, we have been working very hard at this time, and we all gonna try and beat the traffic getting home. And I will see hopefully some of you at the next workshop.
Right. Remember.
Oh, well, okay. Does anybody want to spend any time on number comments? Yes, what the heck? I didn't want to get home on time anyway.
So are you guilt tripping me here? Mia?
Yes, I am.
So,
On
on,
behalf of my husband, I am guilt tripping. him.
okay, so on the February 20th city conference meeting, there was a discussion about lobbyists being on board,
Yes.
serving on board.
Symbols.
And I don't know if anyone on this group, this is that, or was there. And I think. Well, I just wanted to know, is there anybody that's budget that's on the board?
I don't think we have any lobbyists.
I'm just curious, I didn't know.
No, the only other thing that came up was, should people who are on quasi judicial boards, like myself, should we be allowed to be on committees? So that was one of the things, but it did get in the trash.
To be on a board
And to be on a quasi judicial
and
and on any other
on any of it.
advisory board or committee. Okay, but that didn't get in the trash.
Okay, Alan, I'm up. Status of the sewer problem, commercial maybe.
They repaired the pipe. I believe that was a week or 2 weeks ago, and they were doing the restoration of the intersection. I should be opening.
You did. Did you study it further, the pipe beyond to see if that's on on the trunk line,
It-
albeit at the north end.
Right, so what you had is you had a pipe that came down from the north and one from the south. And then they met at a manhole. And it was the pipe that went from the manhole into the pump station that collapsed. So that's the part they reconstructed the manhole. They reconstructed the whole section of pipe going into the pump station.
So it's not indicative of a larger problem with the pipes beyond.
No.
right?
No,
Okay, and then do you know what the expectations is from the, as to what the ULI is going to provide? Is this flooding elevation?
okay, so if you remember several months ago, we had a presentation about road grazing and dealing with sea level rise. And we were looking for some guidance from the commission, and the commission basically told us to study it further and then come back to them with recommendations. So what we engaged ULI on and they'll be doing is talking about establishing what are the criteria where we would want to be raising roads, how high we would want to raise it, how it would be funded, how it would be prioritized. And then from a policy point of view, putting together recommendations that could be brought to the commission to establish exactly that. You know, what should road raising projects look like? How should they be prioritized? And then if there's opportunities for funding them or how we should look at it. So the way it is currently structured, if you haven't seen the invitations, is on Monday will be a period where they will be bringing in, opening up for the public at the mods at the museum. Anybody from the public can come give comments about it. They will be spending the next few days on interviews with various members of the public and people who are engaged in this area in the city, stakeholders. And then on Thursday, there'll be a public session where they will be out briefing what their findings were from that study and then their recommendations. Really focused on the policy side, not on any specific projects.
You know that probably within 5 to 10 years ago, we had a consultant do something on this whole subject. Are you aware of that? And can that get to the ULI? I think it was maybe Hazen Sawyer or something. I remember seeing slides that said you got to go this high for a 1 in 10 year, and then this high.
We have slides like that, but this is getting a lot more into more than just the elevation part on it. This is getting into harmonization, how you integrate between public and private land, because if we grade the road, but we don't harmonize with the adjacent properties, we could induce flooding, which creates legal liability for the city.
A huge subject.
Yes, it's a huge subject. Ralph?
That was exactly where I was going to ask about the finished floor elevations that have been established. And of course, the crown of the road is the same elevation as the back of the sidewalk where the property meets, you know, the general criteria. But if you start raising that, you provide a deeper trench so that it won't cascade over onto the private property. So, I mean, there's a lot of, it's a lot.
There's a lot of secondary and tertiary impacts that can happen from these projects if you don't do them correctly. And that's some of the things that we want to come out in this.
Again, it's very hard to get the public to talk about that, because a lot of it's engineering and.
But I will say
Okay, I'm going.
they're bringing a national panel and people from around the country who have some real expertise to help us coming together to think about a complex problem using Fort Lauderdale as the test bed or the sample that we're evaluating. And whatever comes out of this will be applicable in a lot of communities across the country.
Oh,
And that's why ULI is interested in doing here.
They do this all over the country.
Yes.
Yes. So we're helping them and they're helping us. It works out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't tell Roosevelt, motion to adjourn.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I hope I see some of you at the next work.
Desire to adjourn.